The night her husband threw her out, he said something that shattered her soul. "No one cares about a poor orphan like you. Not now. Not ever." 2 hours later, she was curled up alone on a cold park bench, with nothing but a small suitcase and the clothes on her back. And then a long black luxury car stopped beside her. A powerful man stepped out. A man the entire city feared. The moment he saw her face, his hands began to shake. Because the woman her rich husband had just thrown away was the one person he had been searching for his entire life. Before we begin, if stories about love, second chances, and hope after heartbreak touch your heart, take a moment to subscribe. There's a new story waiting for you every day. That morning began quietly. Too quietly. Amy Foster woke up at 5, just like she did every day. She didn't need an alarm anymore. Her body had learned the schedule the same way a soldier learns commands, through repetition, fear, and consequences. She lay still for a moment, listening. Beside her, Connor Reed breathed slowly, his back turned toward her. Even in sleep, he never faced her anymore. That distance felt like a wall she had been trying to climb for 2 years. Amy slipped out of bed carefully, making sure the mattress didn't move. The wooden floor was cold under her feet as she walked toward the bathroom. She paused in front of the mirror. For a long moment, she just stared. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same one who had worn a white dress 2 years ago with hope in her eyes. The sparkle was gone. Her cheeks were thinner. Her eyes carried a quiet, permanent exhaustion. Sometimes she wondered when exactly she had disappeared. Downstairs, she began breakfast. The eggs had to be soft, but not runny. The toast golden, never burnt. The coffee hot, black, no sugar. Every movement was careful, precise. Not out of love. Out of fear. The first time she got it wrong, Connor didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He simply ignored her for 7 days. 7 days of silence. 7 days of being treated like she didn't exist. That silence had taught her more than anger ever could. At 7 sharp, Connor came down the stairs wearing a tailored gray suit. Tall. Handsome. Successful. The kind of man people admired. To the outside world, he was a rising executive in a major investment firm. Inside the house, he inspected his wife the way a manager inspected equipment. He sat at the table and studied the plate. Amy stood nearby, her hands lightly gripping the edge of her apron. After a few seconds, he nodded. Good. That one word felt like permission to breathe. What are you wearing today? He asked, scrolling through his phone. White blouse. Black pants, Amy said quietly. Be home on time, he replied. I'll call. It sounded like concern. It wasn't. Connor's phone lit up. For a split second, Amy saw a woman's name on the screen. There was a heart beside it. Her chest tightened. She looked away immediately. The last time she asked about another woman, Connor had spent 3 days explaining how insecure, ungrateful, and mentally unstable she was. When he finished eating, he stood, gave her a quick, mechanical kiss on the forehead, and left. The moment the front door closed, Amy exhaled. And then she felt guilty for feeling relieved. The apartment was beautiful, modern, expensive, located in one of the best neighborhoods in Philadelphia. But nothing inside belonged to her. Connor chose the furniture, the colors, the artwork, even the dishes. Amy didn't have a single corner she could call her own. 2 years earlier, she had been a waitress living in a small rented room. Before that, she had been something else entirely. A little girl standing alone at the gates of St. Joseph's Orphanage. Amy was 5 when her parents died in a car accident. One day she had a family. The next day, she didn't. Her first night at the orphanage, she cried until her throat hurt. Other children complained. One threw a pillow at her. Another told her to shut up. She cried anyway. The only thing she had left from her mother was a small cloth doll. She carried it everywhere, and that made her an easy target. One afternoon, 3 older kids cornered her on the playground. "Give it to me," the biggest boy said, grabbing the doll. Amy held on with all her strength, tears already falling. The boy laughed and started pulling. The fabric stretched, then began to tear. Amy screamed, and that was when someone stepped in. "Let it go." The boy turned. Standing there was James Blackwell, 12 years old. Quiet. Alone. The boy no one bothered, because something about his eyes warned people not to. The bully smirked. James didn't argue. He punched him. The fight was fast and brutal. 1 against 3. At one point, someone grabbed a piece of broken glass and slashed James's hand. Blood ran down his fingers. But he didn't stop. When it was over, the other boys ran. James picked up the torn doll, brushed it off, and handed it back. Amy stared at his bleeding hand. "Does it hurt?" she asked through tears. James shook his head. "As long as you're okay." That night, he sat outside her dorm room door. And the next night. And the next. For 7 years, he was her protector. Her friend. The closest thing she had to family. Then, when Amy was 12, James turned 19. He had to leave the orphanage. They sat together on the back steps under the stars. "Don't go," Amy cried. "You're the only person I have." James didn't look at her. "I'll always watch over you," he said quietly. The next morning, he was gone. No goodbye. Just a note. "I'm sorry. Live well." Amy waited for him. 4 years. But James Blackwell never came back. And eventually, life moved on. She grew up poor. Alone. Working small jobs. Fighting to survive. Until one rainy evening, a rich, charming man named Connor Reed opened an umbrella over her head. And that was the moment Amy thought her life was finally changing. She had no idea. She had just stepped into a cage. And she definitely didn't know. Someone else had been watching her all along. From the shadows. Waiting. At first, Connor Reed felt like a miracle. Amy still remembered that rainy evening clearly. The bus doors had barely opened when someone snatched her wallet and ran. She chased him without thinking, her shoes slipping on the wet pavement. The next second, she fell hard, her knees scraping against the sidewalk as cold rain soaked through her clothes. The thief disappeared into the crowd. Her phone had slid somewhere under a parked car. Her wallet was gone. Her rent money, her ID, everything. She sat there in the rain, shaking, not even from the cold. There was no one to call. No family. No one waiting for her. That was when an umbrella opened above her. "Are you hurt?" a calm voice asked. Amy looked up. Connor Reed stood there in a dark suit, holding the umbrella over both of them. His expression was warm, concerned, gentle in a way she wasn't used to. He helped her up, took her to a nearby cafe, ordered hot tea, sat across from her until her breathing slowed. "You shouldn't be alone in weather like this," he said softly. "The world isn't kind to people who don't have someone watching out for them." Those words went straight to the empty places in her heart. He called the next day to check on her. Then the day after that. Flowers showed up at the diner where she worked. Not expensive ones. Simple, thoughtful arrangements that made the other waitresses tease her. "You've got yourself a rich gentleman," one of them joked. Amy didn't see him as rich. She saw him as someone who noticed her. Connor listened when she talked. Asked about her childhood. About the orphanage. About how hard it had been to build a life with nothing. When she admitted she didn't really have anyone in the world, His expression softened. "Then you have me now," he said. Those words meant everything. For a girl who had grown up poor, invisible, and alone, attention felt like love. He took her to restaurants she had only walked past before, bought her a coat when winter came, picked her up after late shifts so she wouldn't have to take the bus home. "You work too hard," he told her once. "You shouldn't have to struggle like this." 8 months later, he proposed. It wasn't a grand, dramatic moment. Just the two of them in a quiet park, the same place where he had first told her she didn't have to be alone anymore. Amy didn't hesitate. She said yes before he even finished the question. The wedding was small, simple. Amy wore a modest dress she bought herself. She didn't have family to invite. Only a couple of co-workers came. But when Connor slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt safe for the first time in her life. She believed she was finally home. The first 6 months of marriage felt like a dream. Connor was attentive, affectionate, generous. He moved her into his upscale apartment and told her she didn't need to worry about money anymore. "You don't have to work," he said one evening. "I make more than enough for both of us. Stay home. Rest. Let me take care of you." Amy thought it was love. She quit her job the next week. At first, the changes were small. Connor began giving her a weekly amount for groceries and household needs. He asked her to keep the receipts so he could track spending. "Just for budgeting," he explained with a smile. Then he suggested she didn't need to meet her old co-workers anymore. "They don't understand your new life," he said. "People get jealous. I don't want anyone taking advantage of you." Amy stopped answering their calls. Next came the clothes. "That dress is a little short," he commented one morning. She changed. "That color draws too much attention." She changed again. Soon her closet was filled with neutral tones. Simple styles. Nothing bright. Nothing that stood out. Connor called her several times a day. "Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you answer right away?" If she explained, he said she was making excuses. If she stayed quiet, he asked what she was hiding. The most confusing part was how gently he said everything. "I just worry about you," he would tell her. "You're too sensitive. You misunderstand things. You should be grateful I care this much." Slowly, Amy began to doubt her own thoughts. Maybe she was too emotional. Maybe she was difficult. Maybe she didn't deserve someone like him. By the end of the first year, she no longer knew what she liked, what she wanted, or what she believed. She only knew how to avoid making him upset. And yet, there were moments when she still told herself this was love, because the alternative was too painful to admit. That evening, the apartment felt tense the moment Connor walked in. He smelled faintly of alcohol. He didn't greet her. Dinner passed in silence while he stared at his phone, occasionally smiling at whatever message appeared on the screen. Amy tried to eat, but the food tasted like nothing. After dinner, Connor went to shower, leaving his phone on the coffee table. Amy was wiping down the kitchen counter when the screen lit up. She didn't mean to look, but the message appeared right in front of her. A name. Tiffany. A heart beside it. "I miss you already." Tonight was perfect. Amy's hands froze. Her heart began pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. For a moment, she told herself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. When Connor came back into the living room, he saw her standing there, pale, staring at the phone. His expression changed immediately. Cold. Hard. Careful. "You went through my messages," he said. It wasn't a question. Amy swallowed. It just lit up. "Connor, who is Tiffany?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. But there was no warmth in the sound. "You want the truth?" he said quietly. Amy nodded, her hands trembling. Connor stepped closer, his eyes flat and distant. "She's younger than you," he said. "She's prettier than you. And she doesn't complain all the time." The words hit like a slap. Amy took a step back, her voice shaking. "You're cheating on me?" Connor shrugged. "Don't be dramatic." Amy stared at him, something inside her cracking open. "But you said you loved me." Connor's lips curled into a thin smile. "I said a lot of things." He walked past her, opened the hallway closet, and pulled out her old suitcase. Then he dropped it at her feet. "You were convenient," he continued calmly. "You cook. You clean. You don't have anyone. But you're boring, Amy. There's nothing special about you." Her vision blurred. "I'm your wife," she whispered. Connor turned toward the front door and opened it wide. Cold November air rushed inside. "You're an orphan," he said. "No family. No one looking for you. No one who cares what happens to you." He looked straight at her. "Now pack your things." Amy didn't move. Her voice came out small, broken. "Connor, where am I supposed to go?" Connor's eyes hardened. "Not my problem." And then he added quietly, "Are you leaving, or do I have to drag you out?" For a few seconds, Amy just stood there. Her mind couldn't catch up with what was happening. The open door. The cold air rushing inside. The suitcase at her feet. Connor's face, calm, almost bored, like he was asking her to take out the trash. "Connor, it's late," she said softly. "We can talk about this tomorrow." "There's nothing to talk about," he replied. "I'm done." Her hands shook as she reached for him. "Please. I don't have anywhere to go." Connor stepped back so her fingers touched nothing but air. "That's not my responsibility anymore." Amy felt something inside her collapse. 2 years. Every meal, every careful word, every apology she didn't understand. All of it suddenly meant nothing. Her voice broke. "I gave up my job. My friends. Everything for this marriage." Connor looked at her with a flat expression. "That was your choice." Then, slowly, he reached for her left hand. Amy didn't realize what he was doing until the ring slid off her finger. For a moment, she stared at the empty space, her breath stuck in her throat. Connor tossed the ring onto the floor between them. The small sound it made against the hardwood felt louder than a scream. "Take your things," he said, "and go." Her suitcase was still mostly empty. She didn't own much anymore. A few clothes. Some old documents. The worn cloth doll she had kept hidden at the back of a drawer all these years. She packed without really seeing what she was doing. Connor didn't help. Didn't speak. He stood near the door, checking his phone. When she finally stepped into the hallway with the suitcase in her hand, she turned back one last time. "Connor," she whispered. For a moment, she hoped he would stop her. Say he was angry. Say this was a mistake. Say anything that sounded like the man who once held an umbrella over her in the rain. Instead, he pushed the door closed. It slammed with a final, heavy sound. Amy stood there for a long time. The hallway was quiet. The lights were dim. Somewhere down the corridor, a television played faintly through a wall. No one opened a door. No one asked if she was okay. She walked down the stairs slowly, one step at a time, holding the suitcase like it was the only thing keeping her balanced. Outside, the November wind cut straight through her thin coat. The city looked the same as it always did. Cars passing. People walking. Lights glowing in apartment windows. The world hadn't changed. Only her place in it had. She didn't know where to go. She had no job. No savings. No friends left. No family to call. For a while, she just walked. Her feet moved without direction, carrying her through streets she barely noticed. The cold numbed her hands, then her face, then her thoughts. Eventually, her legs gave out. A small park sat between two office buildings. Empty. Quiet. A few streetlights casting soft yellow circles on the pavement. Amy lowered herself onto a wooden bench and set the suitcase beside her. The wood was cold through her clothes. She pulled her coat tighter and curled toward the corner, trying to make herself smaller, trying to hold herself together. At first, she thought she would cry. But the tears didn't come. Her eyes stared straight ahead, unfocused. Her mind kept replaying Connor's voice. "No one cares about an orphan like you." The words echoed again and again until they started to feel true. People passed the park entrance from time to time. No one came inside. No one noticed the woman sitting alone under the streetlight. Hours seemed to pass. The cold crept deeper into her bones. Her head slowly leaned against her folded arms. For the first time since she was 5 years old, Amy felt the same kind of loneliness she had felt on her first night at the orphanage. No home. No one waiting. No one who would come looking. Her breathing grew slow and shallow. The city noise faded into the distance. And then, sometime after midnight, the quiet of the park was broken by the low hum of an engine. Headlights swept across the ground. A long black luxury car rolled slowly to a stop near the bench. The engine didn't turn off right away. Inside the vehicle, a man sat in the back seat, his eyes fixed on the woman under the streetlight. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he spoke quietly to the driver. "Wait here." The car door opened. The man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, his posture calm but alert, like someone used to being watched and obeyed. His shoes made almost no sound as he walked across the pavement. Amy didn't notice him at first. Her eyes were half closed, her body barely moving. He stopped a few feet away. The streetlight fell across her face. And the moment he saw her clearly, he froze. Something changed in his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. His hand lifted slightly, then stopped in midair, as if he suddenly didn't trust himself to move any closer. For a long time, he just looked at her. At the pale face. The tired eyes. The woman curled around herself like she was trying to disappear. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Unsteady. "Amy." Her eyes opened slowly. For a second, she didn't understand where the voice had come from. Then she lifted her head. The streetlight revealed his face. Older. Sharper. Harder than the boy she remembered. But the eyes were the same. And the long scar across the back of his hand caught the light. Amy's breath caught. "James." For a moment, neither of them moved. Amy blinked slowly, as if her mind was trying to wake up from a dream. The cold, the park, the suitcase, the exhaustion, it all felt distant compared to the face standing in front of her. "James," she whispered again, her voice barely there. He took one careful step closer. "Yes," he said quietly. The streetlight revealed more of him now. He was taller, broader, his shoulders straight with a quiet strength. His face had lost the softness of the boy she remembered. There were sharp lines now, a seriousness that came from years of hard living. But his eyes were the same. Dark. Steady. Watching her the way he used to when she was a scared little girl holding a torn doll. Amy's fingers tightened around the edge of the bench. I thought you were gone," she said. James didn't answer right away. His gaze moved slowly over her. Her thin coat, the small suitcase, the way her hands trembled from the cold. Something dark passed through his eyes. Not anger yet. Not sadness. Something deeper. "What happened?" he asked. The question was simple, but Amy felt her throat close. For 2 years, she had learned how to stay quiet, how to explain things carefully, how to avoid saying anything that might sound like a complaint. Now the words wouldn't come at all. "He told me to leave," she finally said. James's jaw tightened. "Your husband?" Amy nodded. Silence fell between them again. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the distant sound of traffic. James looked at the suitcase beside her. "Do you have anywhere to go?" Amy shook her head. That small movement seemed to change something inside him. The calm control in his posture didn't disappear, but the air around him grew heavier, like a storm building behind a locked door. Without another word, he took off his coat and draped it gently around her shoulders. The fabric was warm, expensive, and carried a faint scent of sandalwood. Amy blinked, surprised. "You're freezing," he said. His voice was low, steady, but there was tension underneath it. He turned slightly toward the black car parked nearby and gave a small nod. The driver stepped out immediately and opened the rear door. Amy stared at the car, then back at James. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said softly. James looked at her for a long moment. "You never were trouble," he said. The words hit her harder than she expected. Carefully, he picked up her suitcase, like it mattered, like it wasn't just a few worn things from a life that had fallen apart. Then he held the car door open for her. Amy hesitated only a second before sliding inside. The leather seats were soft and warm. The door closed quietly, sealing out the cold night. James got in beside her. For a while, no one spoke. The car moved smoothly through the city streets, the lights passing across the windows like slow waves. Amy leaned her head back, staring outside, but she wasn't really seeing anything. Her body was still shaking, though the warmth inside the car was beginning to reach her hands. James noticed. He reached over, adjusted the coat more securely around her shoulders, his movements careful, almost hesitant. "Driver," he said quietly, "take us home." Amy turned her head slightly. "Home." The word sounded strange coming from him. She wanted to ask questions. Where he had been. How he found her. How the quiet boy from the orphanage now traveled with a private driver in a luxury car. But exhaustion was heavier than curiosity. Her eyes slowly closed. For the first time in 2 years, sleep came without fear. Beside her, James didn't move. He watched her the entire ride. The shadows under her eyes. The way she curled slightly inward even in her sleep, like someone used to making herself small. His hand rested on his knee, fingers slowly tightening. The scar across the back of his hand caught the passing streetlights. The memory behind it was still there. A little girl crying. A promise made under the stars. "I'll always watch over you." The car turned through a set of tall iron gates. They opened immediately. Beyond them, a long driveway curved through old trees toward a large estate hidden in the darkness. Lights were already on inside. The car stopped at the front entrance. A man opened the door. James stepped out first, then turned back toward Amy. She hadn't woken up. For a moment, he just stood there, looking at her. Then, very carefully, he reached in and lifted her into his arms. Amy stirred slightly, her head falling against his chest, but she didn't wake. Inside the house, the staff stood quietly along the hallway, their expressions respectful and calm. No one asked questions. James carried her up the staircase, down a long corridor, and into a guest room that had already been prepared. He laid her gently on the bed and pulled the blanket over her. For a few seconds, he just stood there. Amy's face looked different in the soft light. Younger somehow. Peaceful in a way he hadn't seen since she was a child. His hand lifted slightly, almost touching her hair. Then he stopped himself. Not yet. He stepped back and sat in the chair beside the bed instead. The room was quiet. Outside, The sky was beginning to lighten. Dawn was coming. James leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, his eyes never leaving her. One of the staff members appeared quietly at the door. "Sir," the man said softly, "we've confirmed the name. Connor Reed." James didn't look away from Amy. "Everything," he said. The man nodded once and disappeared. In the growing light of morning, James's expression didn't change. But his voice, when he spoke again, was calm in a way that felt dangerous. "No one," he said quietly, "throws her away." Upstairs, Amy slept peacefully, unaware that while her life had just fallen apart, someone else had already begun making sure the man who broke it would soon understand exactly what that mistake was going to cost him. Amy woke slowly, the way a person wakes when their body has finally given up fighting exhaustion. For a few seconds, she didn't move. The bed was soft. The air was warm. Sunlight slipped gently through thin white curtains, touching the walls in a quiet golden glow. Nothing felt familiar. Her eyes opened wider. The ceiling was high, detailed with elegant molding. A crystal light fixture hung above her. The sheets beneath her hands felt smooth and expensive, nothing like the worn cotton she had been used to. Then the memories rushed back. The hallway. The slammed door. The park bench. The cold. The black car. Amy sat up too quickly, her heart racing. "Where am I?" she whispered. At that moment, the door opened softly. An older woman stepped inside carrying a tray with a cup of tea and a small plate of toast. Her gray hair was neatly tied back, and her expression was calm, warm, the kind of face that made a room feel safe. For a second, Amy just stared. The woman froze. Then her eyes filled with emotion. "Amy?" she said quietly. Amy's breath caught. "Mrs. Carter?" The tray nearly slipped from the woman's hands as she set it down quickly and came to the bedside. "Oh, my dear girl," Mrs. Carter whispered, pulling Amy into a gentle embrace. The familiar warmth broke something inside Amy. She hadn't been held like that in years. Her shoulders began to shake, and the tears came without warning. Mrs. Carter held her the way she had back at the orphanage, steady, patient, letting the storm pass without asking questions. "I thought I'd never see you again," the older woman said softly. Amy wiped her eyes, still trying to understand. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Carter smiled through her own tears. "I retired from St. Joseph's 8 years ago," she said. "James came to find me. He asked me to come work here. Said he needed someone he could trust." Amy looked around the room again, her confusion deepening. "This place, it's his?" Mrs. Carter nodded. Amy didn't speak for a moment. The quiet boy who used to sit outside her door now lived in a mansion big enough to employ staff. Mrs. Carter gently handed her the cup of tea. "Drink," she said. "You must be starving." Amy hadn't realized how empty she felt until the warm liquid touched her lips. Her hands trembled slightly as she took a few careful sips. After a moment, she asked softly, "Where is he?" "He's been working since early morning," Mrs. Carter replied. "But he checked on you 3 times before leaving." That small detail settled somewhere deep inside Amy. After she finished eating, she hesitated before speaking again. "May I use the bathroom?" Mrs. Carter paused, her expression changing. "You don't have to ask permission here, Amy," she said gently. "You're free." The words were simple. But Amy stood there for a moment, unsure what to do with them. Inside the bathroom, everything was spotless, bright, and far too beautiful to touch without caution. Marble counters. Soft towels. A bathtub bigger than the entire bathroom in her old apartment. She turned the faucet slowly, almost afraid something might break. When she stepped back into the hallway later, she moved carefully, her steps quiet, her shoulders slightly tense. The house was enormous. Long corridors. High windows. Paintings and sculptures placed with quiet elegance. People passed occasionally. Staff members, security, men in dark suits. Every single one of them lowered their heads respectfully as they walked by her. Amy didn't understand why. Outside, she found a garden. The air was cool and fresh. Flowers moved gently in the morning light. A stone bench sat near a path lined with trees. She sat down slowly. For a long time, she just breathed. No phone calls checking where she was. No one asking what she was doing. No one telling her what she should wear, eat, or say. Freedom felt strange. Almost frightening. She stared at her hands, turning them slightly in the sunlight. Somewhere along the way, she had forgotten how to live without fear. Footsteps approached behind her. Amy turned. James was walking toward her. He wore a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. The scar across the back of his hand caught the light, just like it had the night before. He stopped a few feet away, keeping a respectful distance. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. His voice was calm, gentle, but there was a carefulness in it, like he didn't want to overwhelm her. Amy nodded once. Then she shook her head slightly. "I slept," she said. "I just don't understand any of this." James didn't sit beside her. He chose the bench across from her instead. "You deserve answers," he said. Amy looked at him, studying his face. "You disappeared," she said quietly. 15 years. Not a call. Not a letter. Nothing. James's eyes dropped briefly to the scar on his hand. "When I left the orphanage, I had nothing," he said. "No money. No place to go. I lived on the streets for a while. Did whatever work I could find." Amy listened without interrupting. "One night," he continued, "I helped someone. Turned out he was connected to a powerful organization. He brought me in. Taught me how to survive in a different world." Amy's stomach tightened. "What kind of world?" James looked up at her. "The kind that doesn't show up in daylight," he said quietly. The garden felt suddenly very still. "I worked my way up," he continued. 5 years ago, I took over." Amy's voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're running it?" James nodded. "I run everything." She searched his face, waiting to feel fear. But strangely, she didn't. Because the way he looked at her now was the same way he had looked at her when she was 5 years old and crying in the dark. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because you should decide for yourself," James said. "If you want to leave, I'll arrange a place, money, whatever you need. No strings." Amy blinked. "And if I stay?" James hesitated for just a moment. "Then you stay," he said. "For as long as you want. No pressure. No expectations." The wind moved softly through the garden. Amy looked down at her hands again. For 2 years, every part of her life had been controlled. Now the most powerful man in the city was giving her something Connor never had. A choice. She looked back up at him. "Why?" she asked. James's expression softened. "Because someone should have told you a long time ago," he said quietly. "You deserve to be treated with kindness." Amy felt her throat tighten. She didn't answer right away. But for the first time since the door had slammed behind her, she wasn't thinking about where she had been thrown out. She was wondering what it might feel like to finally have somewhere she was allowed to stay. Amy didn't answer him right away. The garden was quiet except for the soft sound of wind moving through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain trickled steadily, calm and steady, like the kind of peace she hadn't felt in years. She lowered her eyes, her fingers twisting together in her lap. "I don't know where I would go," she admitted finally. "I don't have a job anymore. I don't have money. I don't really have anyone. James didn't speak. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush to reassure her. He simply waited, giving her space the way he always had. Amy took a slow breath. "But I don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. James leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "You're not a burden." There was no hesitation in the way he said it. No politeness. No obligation. Just truth. Amy looked up at him, searching his face, as if trying to see whether there was any hidden condition behind those words. There wasn't. "Stay here," he said, "until you figure out what you want. Not what you think you should do. What you actually want." The idea felt strange. For 2 years, her life had been about avoiding mistakes, avoiding conflict, avoiding anger. Wanting something for herself had slowly disappeared. She nodded once. "Okay," she whispered. James didn't smile, but something in his eyes eased, like a weight had shifted. That evening, Amy joined him for dinner. The dining room was large but quiet, the table set simply for two. No staff hovering nearby. No formal atmosphere. Just warm light and the soft sound of utensils against plates. James didn't ask questions about Connor. He didn't ask her to explain anything. Instead, he talked about small things. The garden. The weather changing. A new bakery that had opened downtown. Normal conversation. At first, Amy answered cautiously, her voice soft, careful. But slowly, the tension in her shoulders began to ease. Halfway through the meal, she realized something that surprised her. James wasn't watching her the way Connor used to. He wasn't studying how much she ate. He wasn't correcting her posture. He wasn't judging anything. He was just there. Later that night, alone in her room, Amy stood in front of the wardrobe Mrs. Carter had prepared for her. Dozens of dresses. Sweaters. Shoes. Colors she hadn't worn in years. Her hand hovered over a soft blue dress. Connor hated bright colors. He used to say they made her look cheap. Amy hesitated. Then slowly, she took the dress off the hanger. The next morning, when she walked into the garden wearing it, Mrs. Carter's eyes lit up. "That color suits you," the older woman said warmly. Amy looked down at herself. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. The days that followed moved quietly. Mrs. Carter spent time with her in the kitchen, letting her help bake, the familiar smell of butter and vanilla bringing back memories from the orphanage. Sometimes James joined them for dinner. Sometimes he didn't. But whenever he did, he never stayed long if she looked tired. Never asked where she had been during the day. Never questioned anything. Freedom began to feel less frightening. But inside Amy, one question kept growing. One evening, after dinner, she stood outside James's study door. Her hand hovered near the handle. Then she knocked. "Come in," his voice said. The room was lined with shelves and paperwork, but James set everything aside the moment he saw her. "What is it?" he asked. Amy stepped inside slowly. "I need to ask you something," she said. James nodded. "You said you've been watching over me," she continued. "What does that mean?" James was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "Are you sure you want the truth?" he asked. "Yes." His shoulders tightened slightly. "When I was 23, I had enough money and enough people working for me," he said. "The first thing I did was look for you." Amy's breath caught. "I found out where you lived, where you worked. I had people keep an eye on you from a distance." Her mind began racing through old memories. The nights when rent had been due, and an envelope had appeared under her door with exactly the amount she needed. The times when she had been sick and a stranger had paid her pharmacy bill. "That was you?" she asked quietly. James nodded. I couldn't let you struggle like that. Amy swallowed hard. Then why didn't you come to me? James closed his eyes briefly. Because my life wasn't something you should be part of, he said. I wanted you to have a normal life. A good man. A quiet future. Amy's voice shook. And Connor? James's jaw tightened. I knew about him. The words hit harder than she expected. You knew? She whispered. I knew from the beginning, he said. I knew he approached you on purpose. The pickpocket on the bus was arranged. He had someone watching you before he ever spoke to you. Amy took a step back, her heart pounding. You knew he was lying, and you didn't tell me? James turned slowly, the pain in his eyes clear. You loved him, he said. You chose him. If I had interfered, you wouldn't have believed me. And if I forced you away from him... His voice dropped. I would have been controlling you. Just like he did. The room fell silent. Amy realized something then. 2 years ago,